Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh Sweetenham. I've been in high ticket sales for about the last 6 years. And today I'm going to walk you through my entire journey from starting all the way at zero to closing for some of the top influencers in the game like Jerry Minor, Ryan Serhant, and ultimately growing my commissions to over $100,000 a month. We walk through that step by step, every step of the way. Let's go. So I started online maybe back in 2017. As with most people, you start some random business models before you find kind of what works. And so I started drop shipping first. Needless to say, it didn't really pan out too well for me, but it was a great intro to the online world, personal brands, ads, etc., etc. And then after launching 2 different drop shipping stores, neither of which worked out, unfortunately, I stumbled into agency and SMA, back in the OG days of Ty Lopez's SMA program. And so that was kind of my first foray into actually getting onto sales calls. The way that I started and I kind of chose to go out and generate meetings was cold calls. So I was cold calling like the UK version of a realtor, right? Like we call them estate agents over here. So they're like even slipperier and even more broke than US realtors, right? So I was cold calling their front desks, trying to get past the gatekeeper, get a meeting with either the manager, the owner, whoever's running the show. So I was making, 100 dials a day for 9, 12, 18 months, something along those lines. And then I started with agency. I remember at the time I was the first real day of cold calls that I took 29 cold calls, and it made me feel like I'd just been shot in the stomach. It was first day of cold calling. It was horrible, but managed to get to the stage where I was doing about 100 dials a day, and then kept that up for about 9, 12, maybe 18 months, something in there. So I probably made in the region of give or take 10 or 20,000, and really puts hairs on your chest cold calling. So at that time I was studying Cardone University. So this was kind of my intro to sales. No one really in the high ticket space talks about Cardone a lot, but especially he's got a very, very broad university. And there's a lot of stuff in there around follow-up and a lot of other, the mindset of sales and cold calling and prospecting and everything along those lines. Phenomenal introduction and way to start sales. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I had never run ads before successfully. And so when I was speaking with these guys, I was giving them a call, trying to sell them some ad services when I'd never done it before. Not only was I selling a service that didn't really have any proof or track record, I still had no idea what I was doing at that point. So I signed a couple of clients, but I ended up getting to the stage where it was like I'd put so much effort into sign a client, and then it would come to the delivery and I'd have no idea what I was doing, and I was like learning just by failure every single time, and I was just kind of done with agency, And then I saw a YouTube video posted by one of the influencers that I was following, Moran Pobert from acquisitions.com. Not Hormozy's acquisition.com. It's got an S on the end, and it's very, very like an M&A style offer. Moran, awesome dude, by the way, was a mentee of Dan Pena. So if you know who Dan Pena is, this was very much along those lines. I've been just following him a bunch there. I saw Moran put up a YouTube video hiring for salespeople. I dropped him email, got a reply back with a bunch of onboarding material. It took me way too long to go through it, but I wanted to get it right, and ultimately ended up getting a position as an appointment setter at acquisitions.com. And it was crazy, I remember the first time. I think this is something which most guys who've been in real sales, when they get into the online space, they're just kind of like, what the fuck is going on? I think anyone who has more of a traditional sales background where they've been doing in the outer world, like cold calling or door knocking or something along those lines. I remember it was a very, very vivid moment for me. The first time that I jumped on and was on the phone with a prospect who'd come through a webinar funnel, and I was getting on the phone with them, and I was literally the person wasn't hanging up on me, and they were pleased to speak to me, and I was like, holy shit, this guy doesn't want to hang up on me, And that was like a come to Jesus moment for me, And so at acquisitions.com, I was a setter for about 2 months. I think pretty much straight off the bat, more traditional cold calling background really, really came in handy. I was outpacing a lot of the other setters. I linked up with one of the closers and was doing live transfers. So if I found someone who was ready to go, and I'd have a look at their calendar and be like, oh yeah, I'll just transfer you over right now. Ping the closer, and then they just give them a call straight away. And we had a good tag team there. And so in about 2 months, I immediately jumped into closing with these guys. We were using the Russ Ruffino's sales on demand system from Clients on Demand, coming from more of a Sam Ovens and Cardone sales world. So I got promoted to closer pretty much within 2 months. I was kind of obvious that I was one of the more skilled people there, just with the sheer volume of getting your face smashed in with the cold calls. It teaches you a lot. My first month closing there, it's crazy, man. You see with so many guys in the high ticket space, they're so much harping on about inbound only, or I'm only going to take inbound calls. We were pretty much just given, if someone watched the the VSL, or there was a webinar funnel as well, we'd literally just get their name, email, and phone number coming out the other end. And so I was pretty much just like, I'd obviously, dialed all the lists many times, but I pretty much just sat by that lead input. Must have had like a 1 minute speed to lead or something along those lines. These are my first month stats closing on the offer. I was only distributed 30 different contacts who'd actually been through any of the marketing. I managed to make contact. You obviously, you're going to call them multiple times, blah, blah, blah. Made contact with 22 of them. Yeah, managed to book 14 meetings and then got 7 closes out of that. And so that's pretty much like, straight out of the gate, closing like at 50%. Depends on the kind of metrics that you want to use. It blows my mind like how many guys in high ticket sales have never done something like that. You don't really get a grasp for how cushy inbound leads are until you've had to fucking hustle for them on cold calls, or you've paid for the leads yourself, you paid for marketing. Yeah, so that was awesome. That was my first month like making any real money. At acquisitions.com as well, this was where also a lot of my M&A skill set started to develop. And this is kind of one of the reasons that I chose acquisitions.com as where I wanted to go. Again, shout out Moran, he's a top dude. Shout out if you're watching this, bro. That was how I kind of got my beak wet in terms of M&A. So I met one of my business partners there, Jay. This is us on a yacht day in Vancouver earlier this year. So it's awesome. Shout out Jay as well. So I started helping a lot of people with, some people in the community, and then just other people that I'd find in Facebook groups. I was closing full time, and I was also building lead generation systems for some acquisitions.com clients in one of their higher ticket programs. With Jay, we've actually acquired 2 different companies inside his roll-up, which I've got a minority equity piece on, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. Yeah, and so during this time in acquisitions.com as well, there was one other guy who's in one of the programs. I started working very closely with him to essentially build out these lead generation systems for him. So automated LinkedIn, building the systems, placing the VAs in there. He ended up actually going on to buy 16 companies in 8 months. If you know anything about M&A, like those are crazy numbers. Those are absolutely insane numbers. So Dan Pena's, his own record is 22 companies in a year. One of his mentees' records is 23. 16 in 8 months that's 24 on the same run rate. It's at this point that Moran bought the NEPQ 2.0 system. This is the first time that I'd ever heard of who Jeremy Miner was, what he was capable of, what he's done, like the level of sales that he had. And I remember when I was going through this, there was pretty much just a week of my life where I just was only glued in this program, absolutely learning everything, writing every single question out from inside the course. And there was, I tell you, like going and seeing Jeremy even do the role plays that he was, the example role plays inside the course was just blowing my mind. Like this guy was just on a completely fucking different level sales wise, right? Still to this day, I don't think there's anyone better than Jeremy out there. I mean, he is literally like, he is from a different planet, sales wise. I'm not sure if there will be anyone who will ever be as good as Jeremy either. And yeah, so I was going through this, a lot of the big takeaways about neutrality, sales resistance, how the markets and sales have changed. They all kind of hit a nerve when I was like, he's right. The reactions that people have now to the old sales tactics that used to work in 2010, right? 2000 or like the 1990s or something along those lines. People don't react well to that anymore. The entire psychology of the buyer has changed, Now, I never implemented it fully, because that's kind of the nature of the 2.0 program. It's kind of like you get to see everything, but you don't get script with it, and so you can't really integrate it all. So I was still kind of using like bits and bobs, and it certainly helped me make more sales. But yeah, it wasn't like a complete program. So after doing 2.0, and then Moran again, we jumped in as a company to Cole Gordon's 7-Figure Selling Academy, and so this was Cole's stuff. This was back in 2020, so this was like just as Cole was like coming into things, the Socratic selling approach, the 7-figure 7 belief system, right? Let's see if I can get it right now. Pain, doubt, cost, desire, money, trust, support, optional solution questions. Still got it, but haven't used that system since 2020. But the level of depth that he went to in that program, the level of coaches that he had. This is the only picture that I could find of David Davidson was just an absolute G in there. I remember when I was on the group calls 7FSA speaking with David the first time, and he's like, "This is the first time that I've ever spoken with someone who's made 20K a month." You'd seen stuff from like Dan Locke back then about like oh yeah, there's closers making this and making that and all that sort of stuff. But I'd never actually spoken with one, and so I was still kind of like, is this actually true? Like, are people actually doing this? Because I mean, like acquisition.com was a great company to work at. Loved every second of it. Wouldn't change any of it. Made some great lifelong friends there. But again, it wasn't necessarily in terms of commissions. It wasn't necessarily a very highly producing account. I think the most that I made there, which is a lot for me at the time, was only about 6.5K a month. But again, it was really good, really great start. Absolutely loved it. So jumping on the 7FSA calls, just really like, really seeing someone who's been in the game for a lot longer. We had had a private call with Cole, and it was, and like just seeing how he was kind of dissecting the call and everything was just like, wow, okay, these guys are on another level. And then I was on these calls and I started like making friends and networking in some of the live calls. And there's this one girl that I was friends with, and she was like, have you heard of this guy Matt Ryder? You know, and I was like, no, who's that? I've not heard of that dude at all. And so I think that was, you know, like that was pretty crazy. Like I heard about Matt must have been on like a Tuesday or something like that. And I was busy in the middle of the week, so I didn't really get round to it, but I just had this thing about Matt Ryder. Okay, so on Thursday evening after work, I'm like, all right, okay, cool. Let's sit down, see what this guy's all about. And I remember from the first couple of minutes, I was just fucking hooked on this guy. Like I just immediately know like this dude is the truth, right? Obviously Matt came from a fitness background. So he's, you know, doing the same shit that I was, which was just fucking dialing leads, right? And, you know, I mean, like, of course I was calling like broke ass estate agents, right? But he was calling fitness leads. And so again, it's both a very high degree of very difficult conversations at a very high volume where you're not really being given everything and you kind of have to fucking go out there and produce it, you know? Seeing Matt and how Matt sold, I was like, this is who I fucking need to be. This is who I need to be learning from. And so on a Thursday night, I just watched like 8 podcasts, just something crazy like that, like 10 hours of YouTube, you know, just really diving into this guy's stuff. And this is when he was like, you know, super available because like no one fucking knew who he was. And this is the original profile photo that I remember of Matt, funnily enough. I just stumbled across it like putting stuff together for this video. And obviously this is, you know, the mean mugshot that he's got now on his Facebook, but this is how I originally knew Matt, you know, and most of the people back then, and you know, and the start of Sales Sniper and everything. So Friday evening, I message him and I'm like, dude, I gotta learn from you, man. I gotta learn from you. Like how can we get started? And so he gets me on the phone with Marco Cortese, right? This guy over here. Shout out Marco, by the way, if you're watching. Marco's solid. Obviously, you can see he's just one stylish guy, right? But also just a phenomenal world-class closer. You know, I'd say like there's like a level above what's generally available in the high-ticket sales space. In that stratosphere, you've probably got 3 guys. You've got Jeremy Miner, you've got Matt Ryder, and you've got Marco Cortese. Those 3 guys are just fucking another level, you know? There's realistically, I don't think there's maybe I'd put Eli Sanchez in there as well. So yeah, Friday evening, drop a message. Saturday morning, get on the phone with Marco, and I end up jumping in and doing a 12K program when I maybe had like $3,000 in my bank account, you know? Took out a massive loan. At the time, it was massive, you know? One-on-one was pretty big ticket for me back then. For me, that at the time, that was the largest that I'd invested in anything. Had me all in on high ticket and Matt's methodology of selling, NEPQ, everything along those lines. And yeah, so one of the parts of that that was included in the one-on-one was the closing code. So if anyone remembers the closing code, this was back in the real OG days. The closing code, it was a couple of group, like really short 30 to 60 minute role play sessions per week where you jump on with like Matt, you jump on with Marco, you jump on with Will Adams, who was the head of sales for Sales Sniper back then, James Sackle, you know, Tony Haddad, some of the real OGs in the space back then, Jimmy Reese Hopkins. So I was jumping on these calls every single week. One of Marco's calls was actually at about 1 or 2 in the morning for me being here in the UK. Got an early night, woke up in the middle of the night, slapped myself in the face, did a couple of push-ups, get the blood running, and jumping in and handling objection. One of the big things here that really, I think, like helped me a lot every single week, and some people had 2 calls a week. So I would literally be jumping on and I was saying, hey, what's up? Whoever the coach was. Last time we spoke about this, you told me in this situation, this would be a good reframe to say. I tried that on 3 sales calls this week. I closed 2 of them. On the 3rd one, they said this. What do I do if they say that? Oh, right, okay. And just every single group call I was just getting something and making sure I was communicating it in a way which was just impossible to not understand, making sure it was being conveyed in a way that the coaches wanted it to be understood. And I started to get recognized, you know, started to get a couple of little shout outs and everything like that. And Will Adams, who is now a very, very good friend of mine, I'll throw up some photos here of us just had a wonderful time. We met for the first time in Brazil back in 2023, and I just spent about a month with him and his wonderful now fiance. Shout out Maite as well. But I would be showing up in these calls. I got invited to some of Will's private trainings and just my name started to kind of get known a little bit in the inner sphere. And actually Marco, after a couple of weeks, ended up coming to me and offering me a spot in Sales Sniper, which you know, originally I was super humbled by and very excited about. But I originally actually declined it. I was very, you know, loved acquisitions.com, absolutely loved what we were doing there. Didn't want to jump immediately, but again, you know, when the getting towards Christmas time and sales are starting to drop, it's like, yeah, cool. I need to make some more money. And so I ended up actually getting a job offer to come on sell for Sales Sniper in the Ryan Serhant account, which is obviously a super prestigious account, probably the main account which really put Matt and Sales Sniper on the map. Been pulling up some of these OG logos from back in the day that, you know, if you're there back in the day, you'd recognize this font, you'd recognize all this stuff. When I first jumped into Sales Sniper, it was like everything you'd possibly imagined. I'd seen the testimonials, obviously from going through 2.0, and I'd seen the testimonials from people in the NEPQ Sales Revolution group, where you'd see them talking about like, yeah, NEPQ took me from 20-30% to closing at like 60-70%, something along those lines. I'd seen a bunch of those testimonials, and I was still kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure about that. You know, I didn't know about that. It just seemed way too good to be true. And I remember very specifically on the first team call where Matt was like running a training inside in like an internal Sales Sniper call, and they're going around and talking about everyone's wins and their numbers, and there must have been like 3 or 4 people in a row who went like, oh yeah, I'm 5 from 7 today, or something like that. And like, oh yeah, no, I've closed 7 out of the last 11 calls that I've taken, something along those lines. And I was literally just like, holy shit, this is real, you know, and just continue to go all in. That was kind of what it was like back then in Sales Sniper. It's like, it's hard for, I think, people in the greater sales world, especially in high ticket right now, to comprehend what was going on back then. But, you know, I mean, like, there's some of the just absolutely, it was like every single day, someone was just doing some fucking absolutely insanely outrageous sales stuff. Like, you've got guys like Rode, who's just like so smooth. Rode is, look up to Rode massively. He's a fantastic closer. And guys like Will Odums, for instance, you know, like seeing him for the first time, you know, that like that lead that you just like, you don't want this at the start of a sales call. You call up a lead and this guy's like answers like, hello? Oh, no, sorry, I forgot. But no, I'm not interested in this anymore. And while he's like packing his kids into his car, yeah, no, I can't do this right now. And literally straight out of the gate, all the objections that you don't want to hear. And this was a live public call where Will was selling in front of like maybe 5-10 people in there, just watching him do his thing. And he turned that sale around and did a 24K sale. Very skillfully went through the entire call and closed the guy on a 24K package at the end of it. That was one of the moments that my jaw just absolutely hit the floor. There was stuff like that going on every single day. Like, you'd hear snippets from other people's sales calls. And that was one of the amazing things about selling for Sales Sniper, was there was not only was there like Sales Sniper and 7th Level were like sister companies pretty much. So reps bounced between them quite frequently. But also inside Sales Sniper, there were so many different offers that people were selling. And you had the level of coaching coming in from Jeremy. You had the level of coaching coming in from Matt and Marco. And there was just like, there were a number of like, pretty much to be in that account, you already had to be the number one on an offer where it actually meant something, you know, and especially from my time selling at 7th Level, which we'll get into shortly, but it doesn't really mean much, you know. You really had to be number one on your offer where it actually meant something, where there were like 10 or 15 seasoned reps and you're getting to number one, really kind of have a shot at getting into Sniper, you know. And just to give you an example as well, big shout out to Jeff Ketterer, a great friend of mine, absolutely love this dude. You should go check him out for sure. Before getting into high ticket sales, he was literally the head of sales for Mercedes AMG for all of the UK, you know. And so those are the kind of guys that you're rubbing shoulders with. Those are kind of the standards that are you know, prevalent in the company. And most guys had either, you know, like Sean Ray had a massive police background. There are a lot of guys with a military background. I had a military scholarship when I was younger, and so I kind of know how to run with those guys. But it was just, the standards were so high, and just people were doing like crazy stuff. I remember another time sitting on one of Will's calls where he was like, what do you want me to do this? And he's typing in the chat to us while he's on the call, like, what do you guys want me to do this time? And then I was like, just jokingly, I said juggle, and he literally had 3 juggling balls right next to him and just juggled and still closed the sale. And it was just like, it's just the stuff that you can't make this stuff up, you know. And so inside Sales Sniper was closing for Ryan Serhant, especially to get started. Yeah, came out the gate closing very well, you know. I'd sold to realtors, or British realtors before, you know, or estate agents, really producing. And so I was kind of cut off from any other sources of making money. It's kind of like if you delete Instagram off your phone, TikTok, and, you know, whatever, all the dopamine sources from your phone, you're forced to get dopamine in other ways. I cut off pretty much all my other income sources were this was pretty much my only, you know. And so it forced me sink or swim, especially because this was a massive opportunity selling at Sales Sniper. So yeah, went all in, continued to go all in, closed the first call that I jumped on, started closing around like kind of 30-40%. One big thing about my sales philosophy is that, you know, like this is quite counter to Matt Ryder, but I'm really not a big follow-up guy. Like, I was very much much like more along the lines of, okay, cool, I am going to get someone on the call and they are going to buy or die, and so especially in acquisitions.com, like that was a very, very, very challenging offer. If you've watched any of Dan Pena's videos, and you imagine the type of people who follow Dan Pena, and then imagine them getting on the call for doing M&A or doing something along the lines of QLA. It was very, very, people were coming in very hot, and very disagreeable, and there's a lot of diffusing, very, very challenging sales situation. And so this was a similar level of difficulty. It was not easy by any means, and especially over my time in Sirhan, there were multiple guys who jumped on Sirhan. You got to imagine the type of realtor that follows Sirhan and that really resonates with Sirhan. They're going to be very superficial. They're going to be perhaps a little bit narcissistic. Very image based. And then obviously, I do think a lot of realtors are delusional as well, but but yeah, it was a very, 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 very challenging sale. And so a lot of other top guys that jumped on, like really, really top dudes who are still some of the top in the industry, jumped on Sirhan. They were closing like 1 out of 15, getting to stage where I was closing like 7, 8, 9 out of 15, and that was all because of just going all in on one call closing, So started to get very, 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 very good. Got Ryan Sirhan's first sale from paid ads. Yeah, and as we started to scale, we started to get higher, started to kind of solidify the 50-60% close rate of shown up calls, that's including reschedules. And then there was 1 month where they decided to test a webinar funnel. There were 2 other guys closing on the offer at that time, and I was the first in terms of pretty much all metrics. I was closing at around over 90% in that given month, and there's about 40 to 50% for the second and third guys in terms of the close rate there. You're dealing with realtors, number one, right? But it's also, they're used to making short-term investments where they can see their money coming back to them in 30, 60, 90 days, not necessarily where it's getting drawn out over maybe you'll make your money back in a year, especially with the level of marketing that it started with, which was essentially just emails to people who'd, I think, read his book or something along those lines. It was very, very, very challenging offer at different spots. And yeah, so it was through here, I was working one-on-one with Matt. I was doing a coaching one-on-one with Matt throughout all this time. And again, just completely going all in. This was the only thing in my life at this stage, apart from I was also, this 2021 was the first year where I actually made the national squad in touch rugby, which is my favorite, which is my sport. I just absolutely love it. It's just so fun. And so yeah, I was literally just studying all the time. I was finding really, really good people to role play with and being very strategic and very disciplined about my time actually doing role plays. How am I role playing? And a lot of this comes into my philosophy of rapid skill acquisition. I think sales was probably the one of the payoffs of being a very disciplined athlete for many, many years. I played rugby in school. I ran track and field and athletics in university. Mixing that kind of athlete level of discipline with also the really focusing on rapid skill acquisition and stress testing your ability to handle certain objections, to be able to deal with the most difficult prospects, right? This is probably a culmination of a lot of that. One of the big things throughout my entire time there, which I think really contributed to that, was I was so incredibly studious. And so this is an entire drive of videos that I have cut up from mixture of Matt's YouTube, some internal Sales Sniper sales trainings, a bunch of stuff from one-on-ones, and just like loads of, this is bringing back some serious memories here. But I think there's dozens and dozens and dozens of videos that I'd clipped up and I'd be listening to on repeat while I was in the gym, while I was walking around, you're going into town or whatever, having these on repeat and starting to shadow box myself all day, just making sure that there's no way that you can kind of miss this. After a while, this really started to get noticed, and I was like, people started asking me a lot of questions about like, how do you do this, how do you do that, and I started sharing clips and snippets from my calls and just posting them in main channels in Sales Sniper, and I started to get and really, really started to get noticed. This is kind of around this time, and then play the clip.
I was closing over 90, like Marco closes over 90. And I was like, man, like when you see someone like Josh Sweetums, for example, like I listened to some of his calls and I'm like, you're on a different planet. Like that kid's objection handling is absolutely ruthless.
Even now, people are seeing that bit too, right? So it went from you to Will and Marco, then Road. Now, like if we look at the immediate future,
it's Bill, it's Tony,
Bill, Talas, Tony, Josh, that 2 months ago they weren't doing that. It's like, oh, how did they get to here so quickly?
Yeah, Josh has really come along. Josh is very, very good. He's come along. If he had more volume, he'd be making 40, 50 a month.
100%.
No dramas. Yeah. He's like, I would say, arguably, if you take me and Mark out of the equation, he's arguably the best person we have. There's a
skill set wise, pure skill set wise, or everything, whole package,
Yeah, I think he's arguably the best we have.
like 9-inch package.
It is. He develops too much. Same with Bill. Bill does shitload, man.
Yeah, to the point where it always becomes negative because there's so many good.
Josh Sweetums has dissected every single sales call and training I've ever done, and he has his own master document of all of my resources that he's collated. That's why I like his style of selling so much. That's why I speak so highly of him. It's completely subconscious, but he is me.
Yeah.
He sells
See, like-
exactly how I sell.
I
I think they're bored. I don't think they want to. I don't think they want to hear a call from one of our clients that went from $5,000 a month to now making about 30 to 35 grand a month in commissions. No one want to hear a call.
I don't think people want to. I mean, I guess, you know, I thought I was wrong once. Turns out I was just mistaken.
I'm with you, and that's not a problem at all, Sarah. I guess with that, the real question I'd see from my side is, you know, let's say you did do this. Do you think it would work?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay.
Hey guys, what's up? Matt here. Thank you so much for being on the page. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through one of my top sales reps. His name is Josh. I've been coaching him one-on-one for about a year now, and he's been selling for us full-time for about 7 or 8 months. Josh is a really good sales rep. He's not like someone who's just a natural freak or anything like that. He just puts in a lot of hard work. He's a student of the craft and enjoys the craft of persuasion and sales.
You know, and this was around the time that Matt was building the Sales Sniper training portal that was obviously for internal reps, and they were also selling that as a program. And a bunch of the clips in that I had got put in there. You know, and so there's a bunch of these ones. You know, didn't just make it into the Sniper portal, but also made it into the NEPQ 3.0 portal. You know, as examples of, for instance, how to, like, the textbook way of how to handle a partner objection, great way to handle fear, how to sign someone up for a credit card on the call. Yeah, there's one call where some chick gets to the end of the call and she's like, oh yeah, I really want to do this, but I don't have my card on my wallet is in my car and my car's in the shop, or something along those lines. Yeah, so I just on the spot sign her up for a credit card, get the card details. A lot of that, and I'm pretty sure a couple of these are still actually in Matt's YouTube. But yeah, it started to really get noticed. So if you guys want the link to this drive, just DM me the word portal in all caps on Instagram. I'll send it right over. And then, so I've been selling Starhunt for a while. Again, it wasn't really a big commission offer. I think the most that I made there was maybe like 12K in a month or something along those lines. But then I essentially got jumped into selling for Jeremy in 7th level, which was absolutely phenomenal. You know, after the entire time of having seen Jeremy from back when I went through the 2.0 program, and then having, you know, he's just like this almost godlike figure in sales, because he is that good. You know, he is from a different planet sales wise. Yeah, jumping on there, and I was very, very, very nervous, as anyone would be. When I jumped on, I closed 8 out of the first 10 calls that I took in the first call, and I got the 9th with 2 weeks of follow-up. Some of the only follow-up that I've done in my entire career. But yeah, so pretty much straight out the gate on 7th level, closing 90%. You know, Matt says something about selling sales training and selling 7th, I think is very, very true. There's a certain skill level that if you're below that skill level, it's damn near impossible to sell it. You'll maybe get some laydowns. Those are the people who are going to buy anyway beforehand, like regardless of what you said on the call. And then when you get above that skill level, it's just easy. And, you know, and you see this with like a lot of the guys, some of the newer guys who've been through 7th over the last couple of years. Once you hit like a certain level of sales, it just becomes, every call's practically the same, you know. But it does, especially dealing with like, you know, 7th level objections are slightly different from like the high ticket objections that you'll get. You know, it takes a toll on you selling 7th for a while, you know, like there's all dealing with exactly the same like weak objections from pure fear from sales guys who, you know, they're either on a really cushy offer, or they've got like, they made like 150 grand last year and they're making $100,000 of that on base, trying to posture that they're big, you know, they're real sales guys, like, oh, that's cute, 100K a year base, yeah, that's very sweet, you know. But yeah, so sold for 7th for a number of months, and this was back like before 7th level was really like the powerhouse that it is today, before everyone knew who Jeremy was. You know, it was like 7th level was still like more like pyramid structure, where you had when Bill Walsh was still on there as well. So there was like something like 8 setters, 3 triagers and then Bill and then me and Bill. And then obviously after that it changed to everyone was like kind of setting and closing their own calls. And then that I don't know what the current sales setup and 7th level looks like, but that's kind of what it was when I left. So I was selling for 7th on and off for a while, and sold for a number of other different accounts inside Sales Sniper. One of the really, really cool things about selling for a sales agency of the size that Sales Sniper was, where I think I was probably the 20th rep, 20th hire, something like that, give or take. Could have been 15th, 22nd, something along those lines. But I was kind of in that range coming into Sales Sniper, especially as they grew and got to I remember very clearly when they went over and made the transition from more startup, messy startup to corporate. I've learned at this stage I perform so much better in a messy startup situation. The corporate angle is just kills all the enjoyment for me. One of the great things about operating in a sales agency of that size is that there are so many different accounts in there, and so you have like the general standard of sales guy that was in Sales Sniper was super, super fucking high. Like realistically, I think most of the top sales trainers in the current high ticket space, most of them are RX snipers. You've got all these really, really highly skilled guys masterminding on how to close better, and it's just such a fucking like powerful culture there, and having like such high level of coaching from Matt, Marco, Jeremy, loads of really, really, really good guys there. Pressure cooker of just insane quality sales skills. I think that was as good as it was ever going to be. I don't really think it's possible to recreate that. All the ex-snipers are still pretty much at the top of the game. Like you look at you meet when I'm traveling around the world, you meet people from the sniper background as you're traveling, and you're just like, everyone is literally at the top of the game. Like, one of the guys who was like doing DMs back then is now running Eman Gaji's DM team, and then the other, like another one of the closers is like the head of like appointment setting for Hormozy now, and like just all this like super stuff, and like there's just a lot of guys who are absolutely knocking it out of the park, And then in a sales agency of that size as well, you can also jump from account to account very, very, very quickly. You don't have that 2 to 3 week onboarding time that everyone else in high ticket sales is used to. You can onboard a lot more quickly. And so I jumped around and sold a number of different accounts inside Sales Sniper. And there's one day when Jeff, who I was mentioning earlier, bro, I'm having a nightmare. Both my closers are like, I can't remember, like in the hospital, or like wife's just got in an accident or something like that, and they can't take their calls that have been booked later today. It's really tenuous with the business owner. Like if I tell him we got to go and reschedule those calls, he's gonna be pissed and he's probably gonna leave. So he's like, can you cover a couple of these calls? And so they were in like a couple of hours or something along those lines. And so I was like, all right, sweet, yeah, sure, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I'll jump in, cover those. And I had other calls and stuff going on throughout the day. So I was just like, all right, okay, sweet. Jumped on, watched 2 call recordings of the owner selling the product, skipped the pitch, just listened to the pitch of both of them. When you get to a certain level, like it's, of any PQ, it's pretty much all the same, right? Like, you can sell fitness, you can sell Amazon, you can sell sales training, like it's all pretty much the same. I barely knew anything about the offer. It was like a PPC offer. I didn't know shit about PPC, and jumped on, and one call closed, the first call that I took for a pay in full. Full payment taken within the call. The second, and then the second call closed on a payment plan. And then moving forward from there on that offer specifically, I was closing around, give or take, 50%. Yeah, there's not very many opportunities that people have to get that level of experience, which, especially on the type of accounts that Sales Sniper had, because you got to think, like, if you're charging, as a sales agency, if you're charging someone 20-25% of their revenue towards sales, plus ad spend, like that's a big chunk. And so we were naturally only getting the offers where the owners or the owner sales teams couldn't sell them themselves. So they're pretty much the average offer on Sales Sniper is actually also more difficult than the average offer out there. Yeah, and so by the end of my time at Sales Sniper, I'd closed on 9 different accounts inside Sales Sniper. I'd closed the first call that I'd taken on 7 of them. I'd closed over 50% on 6 of them, and I've closed over 90% on 2 of them. Now, not necessarily like Matt Ryder, where it's been a period of an entire 6 months where it's closing over 90%. Those are just been like individual calendar months. Like I'm like, it's incredibly challenging to keep that up for 6 months. You know, and there's you're also realistically to close at 90%, like you do need to be on an offer that has good marketing. You know, you do need to be on an offer that has good marketing. You can't be on a dog shit offer. Like it's very, very challenging without like making serious changes to the funnel to take a company's close rate from like 15% to 90%. It just doesn't really work like that. And also when you look at like company management, close rate isn't necessarily, it's very much a salesperson's metric. It's not necessarily like a company growth metric. You can scale a company on 15% close rate, you know, if the other metrics are right. And so a lot of these different offers were very varied as well. So like there was sales training in there was branding with Serhant, there was like 2 or 3 different types of lead gen. There was B2B consulting, build outs, like fitness. There were so many offers. Sold in a lot of offers for Sniper. When Sales Sniper started to get a lot more corporate, and there was a big lull in 7th level, they're figuring out a lot of things in the marketing. I decided to jump ship. I had a phenomenal time there. Only got love in my heart for the OG Sniper crew. Big shout out, and I was still selling like an enterprise, and for probably the next like 6 to 8 months or something along those lines, I was still selling an enterprise software under Sales Sniper. But I stepped away from a lot of the high ticket and started to go out on my own. The first offer that I jumped on straight out of Sniper was I looked at a couple of different offers. And I ended up just kind of jumping on this one. It's a huge advantage when you've got a great, track record and you can jump on, and not only have you got a track record of being able to jump on offers very quickly, but you've got the confidence and the experience to be able to do it as well, because you can vet an account very, very, very quickly. It all just comes down to how quickly can you get on the rotator and can you take your first call. When you're listening to other salespeople's calls that you're kind of onboarding with and that you're really learning from, after you've listened to a lot of those on a lot of different offers, you can start to gauge like what the marketing's like, everything along those lines. Marketing's like, what the product market fit's like, everything along those lines. These guys had something along the lines of like 500 leads come through their system for 155 like qualified sales calls, and they'd made 2 sales. And so I jumped on and took the first call that I took. I one call closed for 55K. And so obviously like didn't wire in the call, like I paid a 1K deposit, and then like the next day or 2 days later, quick phone call, and then wired the remaining amount. And I certainly found a gold mine with that offer. And so just continued to scale that, brought in a couple of other guys, helped with the recruiting as well, brought a couple of other people in, kind of assisted in the sales management a little bit as well. And that offer scaled to, where it was doing multiple millions a month. And after a couple of months on that offer, I got to the stage where I was lucky enough to earn over 6 figures a month in commission. So this was one paycheck back in the day. So this is a total of around, I had an override on top of this as well. And so this in total came out to about $135,000 in 1 month. This 1 month, I did have an override on top of this. So this took this about 135. But you're doing well when your offer owner can't send you your entire paycheck in one go. They have to split it up. And so this was one of the months that I had 6-figure commissions there. And yeah, so it was a phenomenal ride. Customer results suffer, and then they change the commission structure and everything as well. And so this was, at this stage, I'd had 2 seasons playing in the national squad for Scotland. And I was ready I'd always wanted to do the whole digital nomad thing. And I never really had the opportunity to do it because you kind of had to be in obviously there was COVID, and then you kind of had to be in Scotland to play. So then I essentially went nomading. And so I spent the last couple of years in Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, visited the US and Canada a bunch of times, and have just generally had an absolute blast, especially throughout COVID. Like everything is very, very isolated. You don't really get to meet a lot of, especially online people in person. And in Scotland, I've never met someone in my industry in Scotland. It's always been abroad, and I still not really even met in person another successful Scottish high ticket closer. It's like there's not many of us. And especially as I was like networking with a lot more closers, like a number of things just became very, very, very evident to me. This game is easy, right? Once you know what you're doing, this game is so fucking easy, right? Because most closers realistically suck, right? They've not invested in their skill set. They can't tell their hand from their ass. And they just don't even know what fucking time it is, and like a lot of the stuff that I started seeing a lot of closers, I had been coaching, on and off since 2021, but like I started seeing so many closers struggling with stuff that was like just so basic to me, especially getting to arriving in Medellin and sitting down and seeing some guys like bragging like, oh yeah, you know, like I've just got a sales management client right now making like 15K a month, and you're like, oh, having such an ego about it, and you're like, man, like there's not really much competition when you're actually really good, you know. And so many other guys like struggling to like get gigs and everything along these lines, and so ultimately started up High Ticket Sales Mastery, and have been you know, we've been running this for the last, you know, more or less the last 2. I've been coaching for 4 years, doing High Ticket Sales Mastery for about the last 2, on and off, and just mainly going on referral. I think this is one of my first YouTube videos, you know. So really just been training guys, you know, to not just get that level of on-call sales, but also how do you do all the off-call stuff? How do you actually get in a Zoom room with an influencer, instill the confidence that you're just a sales Chad, get a couple of calls on the calendar, because realistically, like if you know what you're doing, they'll just give you a couple of calls because they like you and they want to see what you can do on their offer. And then you get the stage where you close very, very quickly. And if you can do that, like you can pretty much name the price that you want. You can pretty much name the commissions. Obviously, you're not going to get like a 50% commission, right? But you can name the commissions that you want. You can name the override structure that you want. Once you've been, you know, in the 20, 30K a month range for a while, it's very, very easy to, you know, like break into the 40 plus, you know, and stay there. Once you have that infrastructure in place, you know. And so I'm gonna be dropping a bunch of interviews of like guys that I've helped do that over the last couple of years, and just, you know, general like stuff coming soon. So make sure to like and subscribe down below. First time saying that, pretty cool. But to be able to do that and to be able to jump on an offer and close straight out of the gate and be very, very adaptable in your sales style, there's a certain methodology that you really need to learn, and that's kind of, I'd say it's kind of more my special sauce, mixture of, you know, a lot of the time from Sales Sniper, and then also a lot of rapid skill acquisition. And I'll do another video on this at some point, but I also speak a number of different languages, and I think like your sales ability comes under the larger umbrella of your communication ability. And yeah, so I've been doing a lot of the coaching for the last 2 years, and I've also still been doing a lot of work in M&A during that time. And so going back to with Jay, I'll throw up some videos. Going back to my business partner Jay, during my time in the game, we bought 2 companies together. So one is a manufacturing company in Texas, and another one in Mississippi. So there's quite a large deal size. I won't necessarily drop those, but I'll pop some videos up here so you can see the walkabouts, walking around the plant and everything. And just again, with some of the rooms that I was getting in and the value that I was able to bring through, I began with the lead gen aspect in terms of bringing people who wanted to sell their company or people who wanted to buy, and you can create a deal from that. But I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that. It was way too hard, like way too hard. It was way too much effort, and like you didn't necessarily get very much cash return, which is something that's very, very, very different that not a lot of people really see in terms of M&A. Is like you can't spend the profits of a company you've acquired like you can from a coaching business, if that makes sense. Like it's definitely not Lambo money. Throughout that time as well, over the last couple of years, I was also a principal at a private equity firm, very large. They'd done over $10 billion in transactions. And I had a carry as an external contractor principal on 2 of the deals that I helped source them. And so those guys were world class. Won't mention the name there just because, you know, just kind of out of respect, and also don't want like everyone going in and dropping them emails and stuff, and just it's just not really interested in that. And then I was also the head of acquisitions for an e-commerce aggregator where we acquired 2 different companies, and got to the stage where, so if anyone knows anything about M&A, those deals that we acquired were actually at a 3 DSCR. So if you don't know what that means, I mean, you go Google it, or like if you're not interested in M&A, don't bother. But that's really damn good. And it's pretty much a no-brainer to be able to grow one of those if you're able to get a 3x DSCR straight out of the gate. Yeah, on top of that as well, just some other kind of like experience outside of, I get this is still technically sales, but again, it's more on the M&A side of things. And so on top of that as well, I was also for a very brief stint of around 6 months, the head of business development for a royal family office based out of London. So again, this was just doing a lot of early stage negotiation on a number of deals, kind of deal sourcing and connecting the dots there. And then essentially after leaving that, I started with a couple of business partners, sellyourbusiness.io, where essentially we managed a lot of my e-commerce connections, and then I'm kind of managing the sales and the M&A aspect. We essentially partner with a number of different e-commerce companies. They pay us a monthly management retainer, and then we have a profit share and an equity earn-in based off of hitting certain profit milestones within the company. So you've got a number of actually rather large clients there. That's kind of the story of like, obviously mainly high ticket sales folks in this video, but I've also done a lot of stuff in M&A and and acquisitions and the kind of high finance world as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed and got some value from the video. It's been a wild ride over the last couple of years. Been a lot of places, made a lot of friends, had a lot of great time with the boys, you know, around the world. And yeah, if you liked what you saw, drop a subscribe down below. Hit a like. Thank you for watching, and to your success in high ticket sales.